Folks, welcome back to another episode of The Fallen Badge. Our episode today, the murder of Sergeant Edward O'Grady Jr., Officer Waverly Brown, 1981 Brinks robbery, Nyack Police Department, New York. Sergeant O'Grady was 33 years old. He had 11 years with Nyack Police Department. Now, he was a Marine Corps veteran. He had served in the Vietnam War. He had a wife and 3 kids. Now, Officer Waverly Brown, he was 45 years old. He had 15 years with the department. Now, his mama was still alive, and he had 3 kids. Now, the story we're going to be talking about is going to be the 1981 Brinks armored car robbery. And it's this event here that's going to lead to the death of these 2 officers. Now, this is that turbulent time, even into the 80s, where we've got those holdover radicals that want to do all kinds of bad things, it seems. But we're not going to get into that too much. I think their actions speak volumes about what their true intentions are. Now, a Brinks armored truck was heading to the Nanuet National Bank. Now, they had a branch there on the second level of the mall. It's right there off of Highway 59. Now, it's a 3-man crew, and they're going to pick up a little over $1.5 million cash for the bank. So I get the feeling that this robbery, there may have been a little inside information passed along. Now, the truck already had hundreds of thousands of dollars in it from earlier collections, so there was a lot of money. Now, it's the usual deal the way the armored car and its crew worked. You had the driver always stayed inside the truck, kept everything locked down. You had the two other guards would go in and pick up the money with a 2-wheeler. Now, sitting out in that parking lot, there was a bright red Chevy van, which the person that went and rented it, I don't know if they were thinking too much about picking out a vehicle to use in a crime, but usually you want to get something nondescript. But anyways, it was fire engine red. Now, inside this van, 5 men, 5 of the suspects. There's a passel of suspects for this crime. But the ones that's going to do all the heavy lifting is these 5 men in this van. Now, they are fairly well heavily armed. They got M16 rifles, pistols, and shotguns. And they are a violent lot. So now the van had been just driving through the lots waiting on the armored truck to get there. Now, each of the men inside the van, they had a assignment. They had their role in the robbery. If I'm not mistaken, this particular radical group, they were very violent, but they halfway had this stuff planned out. I believe 1 or 2 members may have fought in Vietnam. Now, the second part of this plan is about a half a mile down Highway 59, there's a U-Haul truck, and it's sitting behind Corvette Shopping Mall. It's also on Highway 59. So their plan is they're going to hit the truck, get the money. They'll go to the Corvette shopping center, go behind the Corvette store. They'll all get the money. All the suspects will load up inside the back of the U-Haul. So there's a man and a woman sitting in the U-Haul. Now, they're both white. And their job will be, when the suspects who have robbed the truck arrive, now those suspects are all black, those suspects and the cash will go in the back of the U-Haul, and then the white couple will drive the truck to parts unknown. The idea being that the police are going to be looking for heavily armed male blacks. They're not going to think about stopping a U-Haul truck with a white couple in it. Now, they also had parked there behind Corvettes. They had 2 additional getaway vehicles, a little yellow Honda Accord and a big old white Buick. There were probably more suspects involved than the 7 or 8 that's always listed in the resource material. They just don't know. So now it's about 3:55 p.m. October 20th, 1981. The armored truck pulls up, parks there along the curve, just past the entrance to that section of the mall. Now Pete Page, who's been working for Brinks for a lot of years, he gets out. He's going to go inside, and Joe Trabino is going to go in with him. So they go in the bank to get the money, and they're rolling it back out on a little 2-wheeler. Now they got over to the truck, and they began loading the bags onto the rear deck of the truck. Now the red van, it pulls up behind them. Back doors open up. The suspects, they bail out. Now one of the suspects runs up to the armored car itself, and he fires 2 rounds into the glass. Now, of course, the driver of the armored car, his reaction is going to be to duck. You don't sit there and assume that the bullet-resistant glass will stop a round. Now, all the suspects who are wearing ski masks, they go to their assignments. Now, one of the other suspects, he's got an M16. Now, evidently, these are where you can adjust to full auto. And he's firing rounds at the guards just right off the bat. No warning, no put your hands up, no nothing. He just shot him. Now, Page is hitting the multiple areas, chest and arms. He's hit all over the place. Now, the other guard, Trombino, he's able to get off 1 round from his pistol before they just shoot him to pieces too. Now, what's interesting about the guard Trombino, he would survive this horrific day, and he would survive all those gunshots that he got, and then he would die at the World Trade Center on September 11th. So now we got both guards down and shot to pieces. And Pete Page, he's DOA. So now all the suspects, they grabbed the money. Now they couldn't get inside the truck to get the other, but I would think $1.6 million is a pretty good day if that's your intent. So the van speeds away. All the suspects are inside. They got the money bags. And it took them less than 2 minutes to hit the truck and leave. Now, the resource material I'm seeing says that they went down Highway 59 or Route 59 to the Corvette's parking lot. That's not how I would have gone, but I would have went in that back way. You could go out the back side of that parking lot, go through that residential area, and you wouldn't be any later to the pickup point than you were going down that highway where all the police are. Any event, the van pulls up behind Corvettes, so all the suspects are getting out, and of course they're all heavily armed, and they start loading up to the U-Haul. Now, in the woods line there, it's all that's residential. Now, there's a college student. She's sitting in the kitchen doing her homework. She looks out the window, and she she sees all these guys and they're heavily armed and they got money bags and they're throwing them in a U-Haul and they're loading up in the U-Haul and they're loading up in that little yellow Honda. So she calls the police. She did the right thing. But she tells the police that, look, there's a little yellow Honda and a U-Haul truck and guys with guns are getting into these vehicles from a red van. And she tells the police that now they turned out back on the 59 and they took a right. So the police are alerted. Now they've already been alerted to the robbery, obviously, but now they know what to look for: a little yellow car and a U-Haul truck. Now there's only a few escape routes from that area of town. Now Nanuet, which is just east of the Corvette Mall, that little town, or I think they call it a village, one of the primary escape routes would have to be over the Tappan Zee Bridge that crosses over the Hudson River. So now they're there at Route 59 and Mountain View Avenue, right there where that entrance ramp is. Now it's Nyack Police Department. So there's 4 Nyack police officers up there at that intersection. You got Officer Waverly Brown, you got Officer Brian Lennon, Sergeant Edward O'Grady, and Detective Artie Keenan. Now they're sitting up there and they get on the radio and they say you got a U-Haul truck and a little yellow car pulling up here. They won't know if there's any additional information because, they don't have tag numbers or anything. Dispatcher says, no, I ain't got any more information. So they're going to go and stop them. Now they get the U-Haul pulled over. It's a white couple in it. And of course, the description coming from the robbery scene doesn't state anything about a male white or a female white. But then again, there wasn't a U-Haul involved in the robbery portion, so it's a dilemma. So they get the couple out, and the couple, they're part of a radical group as well. So they're going through their song and dance. So now the police decide, well, we need to look in the back of the U-Haul. Of course, the back of the U-Haul's got a bunch of heavily armed men in it. So now the police try to open up that back door and it won't open. Of course, that's because suspects inside are holding the door down. Well, the suspects, I guess, decide that they ain't going to be able to drive out of this thing, so they just throw open the door. They come bailing out of the back of the truck, firing. Now, Detective Keenan, he's able to roll around on the ground and get behind a pine tree. And he's returning fire. Well, now he gets shot, but he's still able to function. Now, Officer Brown, they just zippered him from head to toe. And he went down the ground. He was DOA almost immediately. And a second suspect ran up and put 2 execution rounds into Officer Brown. Now all these suspects, all of these rounds are being fired. So you're talking about probably a couple of hundred rounds are flying all over the scene. Now Sergeant O'Grady, he's over behind one of the squad cars. He's able to empty his .357 Magnum revolver, and then he's reloading, and then he gets hit by M16 fire. Now, Sergeant O'Grady, he hung on for about 90 minutes, but he'd later die on the operating table at Nyack Hospital. Now, Officer Lennon, who was on the scene, he was trying to put his shotgun back up because he thought they were getting ready to let this U-Haul go. So He's down inside the car trying to keep his head down. Now he's able to get off a few rounds with his shotgun at the U-Haul. Now the U-Haul crashes into the police car. Somehow Officer Lennon is not hit by any of the rounds because they shot that squad car up. Now one of the suspects who could get into the Honda, he ends up carjacking a BMW and he makes his escape. Now the little yellow Honda, resource material doesn't state that the police were ever even dealt with the Honda. It pulled up by the U-Haul and some of the suspects piled into it. Now it took off, it left on Mountain View Avenue, northbound through town. Now the suspects, any idea using the U-Haul as an escape vehicle disappeared because it was shot to pieces. So the suspects only got a few options. It's going to be the little yellow Honda, the white Buick, or they're going to have to escape on feet. And that's probably not going to be a good thing. Now some of the suspects, they carjacked a Oldsmobile. Some of the suspects loaded up into it. Now they left the scene. Now they were able to get about $800,000 of that $1.6 million as they left the scene. Now one of the suspects was caught there on the scene, female, white. Now that yellow Honda and the white Buick, they're heading along Mountain View Avenue. Now there's really not a way to get off of Mountain View Avenue other than until you ride it all the way to the end. So now you got all the police heading to the scene because the calls done went out that you got shots fired and the officers are down. Now the chief of police there in Nyack, he knew that Mountain View Avenue, that the suspects were going to have to come out on Christian Herald Road. So he's down there on Christian Herald Road waiting on the bad guys. Now they've got enough information out over the radio and they've mentioned the white Buick and the yellow Honda. So now both those cars blow past him and he's now chasing them and he's all by himself. So now he's chasing along, and now it's like a dog chasing a car. I don't know if the chief really wanted those two cars to stop. I think that might have been a bad day for him. Well, now the suspects, they get down to a T intersection there at 6th and Broadway. That's a true T intersection. And if you're in too big of a hurry trying to make that turn left or right, you're going to eat that wall that's in front of you. Now the Buick's able to make a sharp 90-degree turn. Now the little Honda, it doesn't quite do it. It goes across the road and it hits a concrete wall right there where that set of steps is. Now the chief pulls up. He gets them at gunpoint. There's 3 suspects in there. One of them's trying to get to a 9mm pistol that's on the floor, but it's done went up under the seat. And the other 2 in the vehicle are trying to stall the chief. Well, the chief's no fool, and he's already heard on the radio some of his officers have been shot, so he's not going up there and playing hero. So they get additional officers there and they take those 3 suspects into custody. Now inside that Honda, they find that pistol that the suspects couldn't find. They also find $800,000 of the bank money. Now when it's all said and done, the police end up catching just about all the suspects, at least all the known suspects, which that ends up being about 8 or 9 people that are arrested and charged with the robbery or some of the murders or a combination of that. One of the 2 radical groups involved in all this is one that I made mention of in a prior episode. Now they're just about at the end of their rope, but they still had enough left in them to take the life of a few more human beings. Now a good many of the suspects were given life sentences for the murder of the security guard or the 2 police officers, and for the robbery of the money from the bank. Sergeant Edward J. O'Grady, Jr. Officer Waverly L. Brown. End of watch, October 20th, 1981.